This one is for all you dreamers out there, for anyone that has had something they've always wanted to do, or maybe even recently, but felt like they couldn't because it was too late. My goal in this episode is to completely convince you that it's not. It's to inspire you to go after that deepest thing that you've been thinking about, whether it's been weeks or decades, to show you that it is possible. And in fact, the biggest reason why you might not have done it yet is related to you, but it's also something you can control. So let's go into it. For all you late bloomers, I was one too. Now, there's a couple of reasons. I would argue, 4 or 5 main blocks that stop us from going after our dreams later in life. And I'm going to share with what those are, but also how to overcome those blocks. And at the very end, there is an exercise that is going to help you immediately move forward. It does require some thought and reflection, but if you're feeling lost or frustrated, you're going to want to do that. So let's start first about what these blocks might be and think about if any of them relate to you. Biggest one, most obvious one is the myth of age. I'm too old to do this. Let's be honest, there are some things that we can't do at the same level we might have wanted before. Like, for example, if I'm in my 50s and I want to be a ballerina, I can do that. Doesn't mean that I'm going to necessarily go for the best company in the world. Or maybe I will, who knows? Things are always challenged. I always wonder about where it stems from, where it comes from. Why do we think this? And the biggest one that I can point to is that we haven't seen it before. So just because something hasn't existed or someone hasn't achieved it yet, we form in our minds this idea that it can't. And something that I always think about, and you might think about too, is sometimes you got to be the first. Always there was someone who had to be the first. And before that person, it didn't seem like it was possible. And I see that a lot with age. We didn't see someone our age achieving XYZ, or we see a lot less people doing it, and therefore it's not possible. But the thing that's really interesting about this is it's so relative. And I will never forget. So I remember when I was 12 years old, I had this dream where I wanted to play the flute, but I had never gone to a school where they had lessons and we couldn't afford to pay for them separately for a tutor. And I finally got to this school where there was band class and it was free for you to go and learn an instrument. And I went to the first day and I was so excited, age 12. You'll see why I mentioned this a couple times. And I felt so depleted and unhappy when I went into that room because what I realized in speaking to different kids there and even hearing them play is that most of them, I would say almost all of them, had been playing for several years already. And so for me at age 12, at the end of that band day, I never went back because I thought I was too old. You see how that's relative? I'm 38 now. If I had started playing at age 12, I could still have been a genius. Probably not because I struggle with reading music. But the idea is it wasn't too old. And I was thinking that back then. And I'm sure even now, there's things that you have that you want to do that in 20 years you will wish that you would have started. So it's never too old. It just might be different from the way that you thought. Two other examples, because I really want to drill this in your mind and we'll talk about why it's so hard. Nomading. So I wanted to travel the world. I never got the chance to do backpacking because I had to start working pretty soon after graduating for financial reasons. And it was something I always wanted to do, but I just fell into the work world. And the older I got, the more I thought it's too late. Everyone does backpacking and this nomading when they're in their early 20s. If you're new to the show, you might not know this, but in 2021, I did it. My husband and I, we went and we started traveling the world as nomads. Now, it wasn't backpacking, it didn't look the exact same way, but we went. And I really thought that we would be the only ones our age, that everyone would be younger. And yes, there were several people that were, probably the majority, but I met people in their 60s who were doing this. And I saw that it doesn't actually matter. The issue was not that I was too old, it was that I had never seen anyone else do it. And what's really heartwarming for me to think about is that we represented older people, older in quotations, okay? Like if the majority are people 25, you know what I mean? Seeing us do this also showed people that it's possible. So think about with whatever your dream is that you're holding back on, it's not just you're holding it back from yourself, you're holding it back from other people who could see you as an inspiration. Seeing you achieve something at a later age than most people do empowers them. Why is it so hard for us to have this age myth? I talked about one reason is we don't see people doing it. But the other one is there's this cognitive dissonance, which is probably my favorite ever expression to talk about on this show because it relates to so many of the issues we face with our identity. But you have this internal conflict of who you are now conflicts with who you think you need to be for your dream. And so, what most of us do is we stay where we are because that's easier than shifting our identity to go towards our dream. And I have felt this deeply even to this day. And so when you see, for example, that I want to be a ballerina, but they're all under 25 and I'm in my 50s, it's easier for me to just write off that dream than for me to think about it a little bit differently and maybe see how I could integrate it into my life. Hold on to this thought because it will play in later to a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about. The degree to which you find it difficult to shift towards your dreams, if we move past this idea of age, the level of challenge you're going to face is directly influenced by how much emotional baggage you have around that area, how much you have to unlearn. This is why it's easier to do things and recreate your identity when you're younger because you have less baggage, you've had less years to accumulate it. This is why it's easier for someone in their early 20s to launch a business and fail than for someone to do it in their 60s. You have a lot of emotional baggage and stories that have come with that failure. It's almost like when that happens, we are living from a past that doesn't exist anymore. We're defining our behavior and what's possible by actions that already happened. They're gone. It doesn't exist anymore. But we carry them with us. That's the emotional baggage. That's that heavy backpack that we refuse to take off, that we keep adding more and more and more onto it. And instead of taking some things out of that backpack, we just allow ourselves to continue to get smaller and smaller with this heavy load. The past doesn't exist anymore, but it does in the sense of it's limiting you. So anything you think that you can't do, you got that from the past. And I heard this many times before, and it really was just an aha moment of you think that you can't run marathons, you got that from the past. You think that you can't have a healthy relationship, you got that from the past. That is not right now, and it's not your future unless you choose to continue to live that way. There's a Portuguese quote that I really live by and think about a lot, which is o que você leva da vida é a vida que você leva. And what that means is essentially whatever you take from life, whatever you see about life, whatever your perspective is, that is what you are going to get. So, how can you get more from life? How can you follow these dreams? It's by seeing more in that perspective. Because a lot of times when you look at your dream and you think about it, think about it right now. What is the thing you most want to do at the moment? What are the reasons why you can't do it? I'm guessing most of them are external. Time, which we actually control, but let's say time, money. And how this limits us so much is that we cannot see possibilities that exist outside of what we already know from life. So, put another way, is if you're given one story, you read this book, you don't think about another ending or a different way that it could happen because you're only looking at the one book you have in front of you. The biggest thing I can think about related to this was for me, I always thought that success was one thing. Success was you get the good corporate job with a good name that everybody knows. You build your resume. And then, after putting in that time, you can start on a dream or you can start on something else. I probably would have started down this entrepreneurial path. Not even probably, I know because I had a business idea at age 21. I would have started years sooner than I did. But because I thought there was only one path and I had this emotional baggage and this messaging around what success is and how you do it, what I took from life, I didn't see another way. And so it's opening up your eyes, and we are going to talk about that. But this essentially comes into the idea of your narrative identity. The story you tell yourself about who you are and what you can achieve. It's all based on what has happened in the past, your failures, and it determines your future potential. It's not solid rock and stone, but we treat it like that. So, the exercise I'm going to give you at the end of this episode is about changing that narrative identity so that you can feel like what you really want, that thing you thought about, is possible. Related to this is the block of our habits and our thought patterns. So, if you look around at the stuff you love in your life that you enjoy, you're grateful for, you're happy with, that's because of some habit or some thought process you took to make it happen. But it's also the other side of it. Whatever you don't have is from the thought patterns you didn't take and the behavior you didn't follow and the habits you don't have. And this relates back to your dream because if the person you want to be or the things you want to achieve, it's not a case of you can never have it because of time or money or whatever. It's because you need to shift the way that you're acting and the habits that you have. And again, we'll come back to this at the end of the episode because I recognize that's not easy. The last one before we get into the activity to help you is judgment from others. This is a very big block. What would someone think about me in my 50s or 60s becoming a ballerina? Yes, you will get people who criticize that decision. 100% you will. Because it's so outside of the box of what they saw. And fear of that rejection is hard. Something that can put it in perspective, though, how many people would need to accept your dream before you're okay with going ahead with it? If part of the reason it's stopping you is what others will think, how many need to accept you? Is it 100? Is it 50? Is it 10? Is it 1? Someone asked me this question a long time ago, and I realized that for me, it was 1. And I knew that that 1 could be me. And even if it wasn't me, there was someone in my life, there was at least one person in my life that would respect my dream and cheer me on. Find others like you who have this dream. Ultimately, their judgment, though, is not something that you need to carry with you. Let it go. Because later on in life, when they are no longer in your life for whatever reason, you are going to think back about why didn't I just do it? Why didn't I just go for it? Why did I care so much? People who are following what they want to do in life, they are not judging you. So if you look at the people who are, it is often because there's something that they are not following, or they are not doing, or they are still weighing so much the opinions of others. I recognize this is not an easy thing to let go. I recognize that we have different family and cultural dynamics that make it harder. I'm not saying it's easy, but to really think about, is this one dream, be it big or small, something that I will later regret not having tried because someone else told me I couldn't? Now let's go into the activity. So this is something that will help you move from, I've got this dream, how do I get into actually making it happen? You can come back to this later if you want to write while I speak, or you can just keep it in your mind for now. You are going to think about, ideally write, but you're going to think about 3 experiences from your past that you believe shape your identity right now and the emotions you have around those. How did those experiences influence what you believe is possible for now, and about who you are or who you should be. Then we're going to move deeper into your self story. How do you see yourself, your abilities, your strengths, your limitations, your core values? How do you see yourself? Because a lot of this is going to influence, again, what you think you can change. When you answer these two questions, you want to look back because it's not just writing them or thinking about them, it's reflecting. And you want to look back and see, are there any reoccurring or repeating themes? Do I tend to see failure as this huge thing that defines me? Am I always lucky or unlucky? What are the patterns that you see in how you describe your story? As we go deeper into it, we start looking at limiting beliefs. And we've heard this so many times that it becomes cliche. I want to get deeper than that with this. And I want you to think about what are the specific beliefs, very specific to this dream, that is stopping me? Is it age? Is it what other people expect? Is it my abilities or what I'm good at? I talked before about how a previous episode, I'll link it in, where I did it was a New Year's resolution, but I did the whole year of every month I would try something that challenged my comfort zone. So anytime I would say, I'm not a person who plays sports, who sings, etc., I would go and do that activity and prove myself wrong. What are the beliefs that define you? Because some of them are not as solid as you think. If you say my limiting belief is age, look back and think, what is the experience or what did someone tell me that makes me think that that's the case? Is there a cultural norm around it? Is it what society says? Why do I have this specific limiting belief? What story did I latch onto? Now we move into direct impact on your dreams. How has all of this story, these limiting beliefs, stopped you from taking action or made you quit? What dreams have you abandoned because of these beliefs? And finally, this is one where you will want to write, is we're going to rewrite your narrative identity. We're going to change the way that you see yourself. So you're going to choose one limiting belief from the list and challenge it, writing down evidence to the contrary. So, for example, if one of my limiting beliefs for my dream is that I'm too old, I can reframe it as I have so much experience in XYZ that will allow me to do this. Or I have more resources to be able to pay for a coach now in this. And I didn't have that when I was younger. Make it empowering because any limiting belief you have can be reshaped. Then, once you've got that limiting belief down and you've reframed it, you're going to create your new self story. You're going to think about the person who has gone after that dream, and you're going to think about what are their strengths, their abilities, the steps they took to get there. And most importantly, look at what are the changes in behavior and mindset and habits that allowed that person to have success. And I know that that can be a lot. So I would invite you to just think about three specific actionable ones that align. Three habits or behaviors or mindsets. It could be, if I keep going back to that ballerina one, it could be I start getting classes every Thursday, or I start watching YouTube videos every Monday, whatever it is, some sort of goal that I can do that will allow me to start moving towards that new identity. So I no longer have this gap between who I see as achieving it and who I am right now. Finally, once you've written all this down, every week, look back on your progress. What changes have you noticed in the way you think, feel, or act? If this seems like a lot for you to do, tie it into something you already do. If you do, let's call it Friday yoga at home or in a class, after Friday yoga, you're going to go and reflect on these goals and see where you're at with them. I know this is challenging because a lot of us, we need accountability to do this stuff or we forget. I wanna know what you're going after. So please, if this episode is inspiring you and you're fired up and you're thinking, "I'm gonna just go do it, heck, whatever," please leave a review saying what it is you're going after, why this helped, because I think the more that people can see this stuff, "Oh, this person's doing that, this person's doing this," the more it feels achievable for everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.